Mark and Sarah's Stamping Retreat. Today we're going to be making 5 fancy aperture cards using this Sentimentally Yours Phil Martin box kit. So this is a magazine box kit. It's really good value for money. So in the UK it retails at $14.99, in the US it's $17.99, and you get all this free with the box kit. So we've got a snowflake embossing folder. We've actually got 2 stamp sets. So you've got this huge A4 and then this extra one as well. And you've got so many beautiful stamps on there. I really like the fonts on the sentiments as well. And we've got these dies. You've got Merry Christmas, and the Merry Christmas actually is 2 separate words as well, so you can have them next to each other or underneath each other like they are on here. And then the hearts and the stars. And then you've got this paper pack, and this actually comes in the middle of the magazine. So you've got all these nice pieces you can cut out on here and on the back, and then we've got loads of pattern papers as well. And then we start again. And then you also get the magazine, which has a ton of inspiration in it, including the cards I'm going to show you today. So I'm going to start off with a circular card. And I've used this circles die set from Carnation's Craft to use mine. I'm sure that you probably have some circles dies in your stash. But in case you don't have one where the circles are so big, I'll try and find another set where the circles get this big and link it in the description below, because I think it's quite hard to find this Carnation's Craft one now. But the reason that I like it is because it has a good range of sizes of circles and the increments are quite close together. So if I can find one similar, then I'll link it in the description below. So I have cut 2 circles that measure about 5 inches from Bermuda Bay cardstock from Stampin' Up, a kind of tealy colour. And then I've used the die that's 2 dies down. So this one measures about 4.5 inches. And I've just cut that from white cardstock. So I'm just going to temporarily tape together these 2 layers just to keep them in place while they go through the die cutting machine. And then I want the Merry Christmas to go in the middle of a circular aperture. So I just want to make sure that I'm using a circle big enough to fit around those. So I'm going to use this one here, and this is roughly 3 inches. And I'm going to cut that through both of these layers. So now I've got this, which has the circle aperture in the same place on both. And then I used the die that was 2 dies down from this aperture to just cut a circle out of white cardstock as well. Then I'm going to glue this piece onto the base. And then I'm going to create my card base. So I'm going to take my other circle and I'm just going to use my trimmer and line it up at this 1/2 inch mark here. And I'm going to cut 1/2 inch off the top of my circle. Then I'm going to turn this round. I'm going to just line this line up here with the 4 inch mark here. And then I'm going to use my score tool just to score across there. And then I'm just going to add glue above this score. So my video cut out a bit there, but all I've done is just glue. So we put the glue on the top of here, and I've just glued it to this front piece. So now we've got a card blank. And if you've not seen me make one of these before, the reason that I chop off this edge here is so that it stands up nicely. It doesn't kind of like rock and roll when it's standing up, it stands in place. So the next thing I want to do is create some decorations for it. So I'm going to grab this stamp and this one, so if it makes it easier to see, that's this one and this one here. I'm going to use those to decorate it, and I'm just going to stamp those in my Ultra Jet Black ink. And sometimes stamps, when you stamp them for the first time, don't come out as beautifully as they could do. I'm just stamping this one 3 times. So you'll have seen me in other videos using my little trick where you stamp the stamp into VersaMark ink first and then into your black ink, and it helps the black ink to stick a little bit better. But I thought that for this one I'm going to use my micron pen, and I'm just going to touch it up with my pen, because it's another way if you don't want to waste an image, and this one is there's not huge amounts wrong with it, so I'm just going to quickly touch it up with my pen, just in the places where I'm not happy with it. So I just had those few little bits to touch up, and I might just touch up the centre of this flower as well. It doesn't matter about those because we're actually going to decoupage these, so you'll see in a second that we don't really need those ones. So what I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to decoupage these, so I'm going to colour the whole of one flower, and then I'm going to colour just parts of the other flowers. So I'm using my Copic Ciao R85 pen for this first, and I'm working to a colour palette for this. So the colour palette has a dark pink in, which is why I am colouring the poinsettias in dark pink. I'm actually not that great at kind of thinking outside the box when it comes to like colouring flowers. If I know a poinsettia is red, then I would usually do it in red, but as I'm working to a colour palette and the closest thing on my colour palette is pink, then I'm going with pink today, and I'm just going to use red accents to kind of bring in that bit of red. So I'm just block colouring it first, and then I'll add some accents with the red in a second. So for this one, when you're decoupaging, you want a full image, then you want to kind of come forwards a layer. So if I come forwards a layer, you can see that this one and this one and this one and this one and this one, all of those leaves are kind of further in the background, and these ones kind of sit above them. They're not covered by any of the other leaves. So I'm going to colour in these 3 leaves and this centrepiece as well. So essentially I'm saying that these other leaves are my background. So this one will be my background piece. This one is the next layer forwards. And then the next layer forwards from that is this centre bit that kind of sits on top of those leaves. So for the final one, I'm just going to colour that centre bit. So then I'm going to use this R35 pen to just add on a few accents. And then I'm going to use these 2 colours for the bow on here as well, just to tie them all in. And then I'm just going to use the BG49 for the leaves on here. And then we're going to cut them all out, but the flowers, we're just going to cut around the pieces that are coloured. With the flowers, I'm cutting right on the lines, but with this piece I'm going to leave a small white border behind, so otherwise it's going to be too difficult to cut some of these stem bits. So then I've got my pieces, so those are the 3 pieces that make up my flower. And I'm just going to grab my dimensionals and just build this flower pop. So this is my background piece, so then I can pop on my middle piece, and then I can pop on the piece that goes at the front. And you can just kind of scrunch some of those petals up a little bit as well, which also helps give it a bit of extra dimension. And then I'm just going to pop on a little dab of glue in the middle. And then I've just got these gold gems. They're not like a certain brand or anything, they're just gold gems. I'm just going to pop one of those in the centre. And then I'm going to do a bit of a Blue Peter moment and say, and here's one I created earlier, an extra one. And then I've got this piece, and I actually created an extra bow from in the middle of that as well, so that I could lift that up too. We've got some really nice dimensional elements for on our card. So then before we do the next bit, we just want to make sure that the card is up the right way. And then I can glue that on the top. And I kind of want these around here, but I just want to make sure that they're not going to interfere too much with my sentiments. So let's just glue this on. I've cut that Merry Christmas out of gold foil sheet, and so I just want to glue it onto here. And you know what? I always forget to put adhesive sheet behind my cardstock before I cut it, but I'd really recommend some adhesive sheet for these die cuts because they're really fussy. So I'm just going to pop on a little bit of glue. And the other thing that I've actually got that I've just thought about, which I always forget, but it's really useful for this kind of thing, is this Siren Crater sticker thing. And to be honest, I have had this for years and years and years, but I know they still do them. They just might not look quite like this anymore. I'll link one in the description below. And you just pop your die cuts in there and then pull this, and then I can just tear that off there. Then I'm just going to rub over these. And rubbing it just makes it like not sticky in the wrong place essentially. And then I can tear off the top. And essentially it's just left me with stickers. So now I'm just going to pop that up in the centre of my card. Just going to use some double-sided foam pads. And then I'm going to put that in the centre of my circle. And then I'm going to pop these couple of flowers around here. And then what I'm going to do on these berries is just add some more of those gems. So I've still got a few of those larger gems there. And then I'm going to add in some of these smaller ones as well. So I'm just going to add a few drops of glue onto the berries here. And then I'm going to add some jewels on top. I'm going to use my Sticks 2 pickup pencil, which is honestly one of my favourite things for adding gems, because it works really nicely, it's really affordable. I don't think I'll ever have to buy another one in my life because I've never sharpened this and I've had it for years. And then I'm feeling a little bit blingy today, so I might actually add a whole ring of gems around the outside of the card. So there's our finished card, really pretty, very blingy, stands up nicely. So let's move on to the next one. So then for my next card, I've created a card blank that measures 3 3/4 by 8.5 inches. And I'm going to do some ink blended. So I've got my Distress Oxide inks in Spun Sugar and Shaded Lilac. I'll start with the Spun Sugar. And I'm going to go from this side and just blend in towards the middle. And I'm going to see how it looks. I may end up using a darker pink towards the middle as well. And you'll see that I'm putting this on in layers, so I'm putting on a layer and then another layer over the top just to add that colour and make it look a bit smoother. And then I'm going to start with the Shaded Lilac from this end, and I'm going to go in with that. And so I do think I want to soften that blend a bit with a bit of a darker pink in the middle. So I'm going to go with Flamingo just to blend along that line. So I've got this nice inky background. And then while I've got these out, I'm just going to do a few patches on here as well because I want to stamp over these in a minute. So I'm going to start with a Spun Sugar and Kitsch Flamingo. So I'm just going to do like a little area that I can stamp on later. Hopefully if it doesn't make sense just now, it'll make sense in a minute. So I'm just doing a bit of Kitsch Flamingo and a bit of Spun Sugar. And then I'm going to do a bit of the shaded line. I might need a new brush for the yellow, I think, because I don't want to get that mixed in with the lilac. So then this is the Wild Honey. So I want a patch of the Wild Honey, just a really nice bright kind of goldy yellow. So now I want to use some of these bauble stamps to stamp on here. So I'm going to use my VersaMark ink. I'm just going to stamp this bauble on the purple. And then I'm going to put the heart on the pink. And then I'm going to put the star on the yellow. And then I'm going to use my Ultimate Antique Gold embossing powder. So I'm just going to heat up my embossing tool. So then I've got my lovely shiny baubles. So that's how you know when you've heated up your embossing powder enough, is when it just turns shiny. You don't want to heat it up after it turns shiny. Then I'm going to use my layering squares dies to create apertures. I think this particular set isn't made anymore, but I'll try and link some below that are similar in case you don't have any layering squares. So I'm going to choose one that will go around all of my ornaments. So I'm going to use this one, which is about 2¼ inches, to just create 3 apertures in the front of my card. Then I've cut a piece of gold cardstock that is 1/4 inch smaller than my card front, and I'm going to glue that inside. And I am definitely going to regret this when it comes to taking photos, because this much gold cardstock is going to be a nightmare, but it looks really pretty. So I can't, not really. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these decorations inside as well. I'm just going to snip a bit off this. So then I've got this Merry Christmas that I've cut out with some Stampin' Up! Bermuda Bay cardstock. I'm just using this trick again with my Ciao sticker maker. And I'm going to start with the Christmas part of the sentiment. I'm actually just going to chop off this little bit here, just so it doesn't come too far down over the bottom of the card. Then I'm going to grab some of these gems that we used for the last card. I'm going to go to town decorating with them. So there's that. So I hope you can see how shiny and gorgeous that is. So then for my next card, I've got a 5-inch card blank, just a white one, and then I've got a piece of the paper from the pack that I've cut to fit it. So I'm just going to glue that onto my card blank, and then I'm just going to score halfway down the front. Now I'm going to make kind of an easel card, but not really a traditional easel card. So I'll show you what I mean in a second. Just folding that down the front. I'm just going to take one of my square dies. So I think I'm going to take this one here, and that one's 7 centimetres roughly. So that's about 2.5 inches. And I'm just going to tape it onto here so the points just rest on this midline here. So then we've got our diamond in our card, and I taped these 2 squares together. The middle one is the one that we cut the aperture from, and the bigger one is 2 sizes up from that. So that measures about 3.25 inches. And I cut it from this cool basil cardstock that's pale pink on one side and dark pink on the other. So we're going to use the pale pink side. So before I glue that on, I just want to create a score line between 2 corners, just so that it bends easily on that line where we've got the score line on the card. So now this will bend more easily. And I'm just going to glue that on. So then I want to create a stopper for the card. So I've got another piece of this pink cardstock, and then I've got a piece of this border which I cut from the paper pack in the magazine. Now I just put a bit of white card on top of that to make it a bit stiffer. And I'm just going to glue the pink piece just inside the card. And then I'm going to pop some of these kind of waste bits of from the foam pads just on the back of here. So if it's going to be a stopper, it needs to stand up a bit. And this piece of pink cardstock is about 3/4 inch, by the way. And then I'm just measuring this to make sure that this is where I want it to be. And then I'm just going to put that along there. So then that will stand up like that. So then I just want to decorate the front of the card. So I've got this Season's Greetings. So I just use this stamp to stamp in black onto white card. And I just want to attach it down the middle because I want it to pop up when this bends. So I'm just going to pop a bit of these foam pads just down this centre point here. And then I'm just going to line this up with the bottom of the card. And then when that bends up, then this will bend up too. And then I stamped these 2 presents and coloured them with my Copics. And I'm just going to pop them inside the card. So I'm going to glue this one. And then I'm going to pop some dimensionals behind this one. And so then when it's stood up, it'll look like that. And then when it's flat, it'll look like that. So for the next card that I'm going to create, I've got an A6 card blank. So that measures 8.25 inches by 5 7/8 inches. And I've scored and folded it in half. Then I've got a piece of that same cardstock from Basil that I used on the last card, and that matches this card front. So I'm just going to cover the card front in that. And then I've got this piece which is about 1/2 inch smaller than my card front. And then I've got Essential Rectangles dies from Spellbinders. Now I've just taken this one here, and I'm just going to take this cardstock down to the front of my card, so I don't want it to move about. And then I'm also going to tape on the die. So I want to cut an aperture right the way through the front of my card using this die. So then I'm just going to open it out and run it through like that. I might need to run it through a couple of times because it's got to get through 3 layers of cardstock. So then I want to create a bit of extra texture. So I'm going to pop my frame into the embossing folder and run that through my die cut machine. And look how lovely that detail is. So then I've got this piece of this same pink cardstock. And I'm just going to glue it onto the back of here. I want that to be like the aperture in the middle. Before I do that, I'm just going to create some bits to go around it. So I want to stamp this big bit here. So then I'm just going to stamp this piece and the 2 presents. I'm going to stamp that again because this bit didn't come out. So then I'm just going to colour these in with my Copic. So I'm just going to ink up this bow as well, because I just want an extra bow just to pop on top of that. So I'm going to cut everything out. Then I've got this Thinking of You This Festive Season stamp. And I'm just going to use my alternate ink to stamp. I've got this square that I cut out, and it was an aperture. It was the middle of the frame from the last one, so it's some of this card here, and I'm just going to stamp this in the corner, and then I'm going to cut it down and pop that on the top, and then hopefully it'll look like one of the presents. Then I've actually cut another frame because I decided that it looked a little bit too fussy with that embossing on it, so I've cut another plain frame. I'm just going to glue this behind it, and this piece is just 1/8 of an inch smaller than this piece, just so that it just sits nicely behind it. And I've cut it using this press cut Deco Collection Ciao die. I hope I pronounced that properly. So I've just cut that using that. There's actually 2 dies in this set. You get a rectangle that goes round this so that you can cut it out if you want to, but I just needed the pattern for this. So let's just pop some tape run on here. Then I've got this nice aperture with the kind of lacy effect on it, and then I can glue that onto there. Then you've got this lovely kind of lacy aperture in the card. So I'm going to glue this one on. So I'm just being careful not to put glue where the aperture is. And then I'm going to put dimensionals behind this one. I'm just putting them at the bottom so that, again, they're not going in the aperture. And then I'm just going to put another dimensional behind here. So that'll go there. And I can put a little bit of glue along this side. Now I'm going to glue this along the top. And I'm going to pop up the bow. And then I'm going to do what I did the last time we used this piece and just pop some of the gold gems across the top. And then because I'm loving these gems so much, I'm going to pop them onto this lattice bit as well. And I'm really pleased with how that finished card turned out. So then for my final card, I'm going to create a tunnel card. So this is all Bermuda Bay cardstock, and I've cut this piece to just under 6 inches, you can see here. And the reason I've done it a bit under 6 inches is the card's going to have a lot of dimension, and I want it to fit in a 6-inch square envelope. So I've got one piece that's nearly 6 by 6 inches, then this one's nearly 6 by nearly 7 inches, and the same with this one. And what I'm just going to do is just score these at the ends. I'm going to score it at 1/4 of an inch and at 1/2 an inch on each end. And then I'm going to bend that way, and I'm going to bend the other one the other way. And I'm going to do that with both pieces. So now from the paper pack, I'm going to use this sheet, I'm going to use this sheet and I'm going to use this sentiment. So I've cut these two pieces of paper just down to fit that. And then the sentiment, I'm just going to kind of cut round so that I can use the other bits on this page. I'm going to kind of make it the biggest I can without ruining everything else. So I want plenty of space around there, but I didn't want to ruin all the other sentiments. I managed to cut it, so I've just got that on the back. So then that's going to be the back piece for my card, and I'll place that afterwards. I'm not going to glue that just yet. The other two I'm going to glue now. So the piece of nearly 6x6, I'm just going to glue this. And just remember, you want a really thin coating of glue because it is paper. So if you use too much, it's going to go all like wobbly and gross. So I'm going to cover that with that. Then I've got one of these pieces that I'm going to turn this way, and this is going to be the front of our card. So I'm going to glue this onto the front of our card. And then I want it to be a tunnel card. So bring in my circle dies. I'm going to see which one fits around this very bright and bright sentiment the best. I want it to be a reasonably tight fit. So I'm going to use that one because that one fits nicely round. This is my middle layer. So I'm going to use this circle to cut a hole in the middle of here. And then the circle on this front piece needs to be a bit bigger to make the tunnel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace the circle through. It doesn't matter that I'm getting pencil markers on it because that is going to get cut out. So then I know where my circle needs to be. And then I want to be able to see a bit of this card through. So that is 2 sizes bigger, but I might even go 3 sizes bigger. So I'm just going to make sure that that is nicely kind of centred around that middle circle. And then I'm going to cut that through the front piece. So this is going to get stuck over here, so you won't see that that's all like wonkily cut. I just want to make sure that it's going to look nice when this goes on top. So I'm just placing it in the right place. Let's get a bit of glue on the back. I'm going to put it back down. It's the right place from memory. I might need to just give it a bit of a wiggle so I'm not fastening it. Yeah, that needs to go sideways a bit. Okay, so I'm happy that's in the right place now, so I can smooth that down and stick it properly. And then I'm going to use some red liner tape for a bit of strength. To be honest, you could use any strong sticky tape that you've got. The red liner tape's strong, and it's also a nice width for this strip because you don't want anything too wide. And then I'm going to take one side off and line this up on here. And then I'm going to take the other side off. And then I'm going to do the same on the front, so I'm just going to pop some red liner tape down here. And then another piece down the other side. And line this one up the other side. And then we've got this really cool tunnel card. So I'm just going to decorate the front of it. I don't think it needs too much decoration. So I'm just going to use this set of baubles here. So then I'm just going to stamp this twice. And then I'm going to colour it with my Copics. And I shouldn't have coloured the back one of this, I only need the front one. But that's the better printed front one, so I do want to use that. And I want those to sit there. So I'm just going to cut this little bit off the top. And I'm going to take my pigment micron pen and I'm just going to extend this up here. And then I'm going to carry on cutting it out. I feel like I might need a third one, so I'm going to use this one as well. Let's just glue these down then. And then I'll just add a double-sided foam pad behind here. And then I can't resist just adding one more of these gems for good luck. I might actually just go a bit wild and just really add some shine all the way around with those gems, just because I'm a bit obsessed with them today. Then there's that final card. Now I'm really glad that I put those extra gems on because I think it just finishes off really nicely. So let's bring in the other cards. So we've ended up with 5 aperture cards, all really different from each other, but all created using the same kit. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's projects. I'd love to hear which is your favourite, so please let me know below. If you did enjoy them, I'd also appreciate it if you could click like below, and you can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new YouTube video available. All of the products that I've used for today's cards are listed in the description below, and there's also a picture list over on my blog if that makes it easier to find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.